I didn't think it would end like that. Not with a pink slip and a manila folder slid across a conference room table. After 12 years. 12 years of unpaid overtime, weekends bled dry with project deadlines, and birthdays skipped for the good of the team. I remember thinking, he won't do it. Not me. Not after everything. But that's the lie you tell yourself when you believe loyalty buys security. It doesn't. Not in corporate America. And certainly not in a corner office where the real decisions happen behind closed doors, over 25 bourbons, and under the warm glow of 6-figure bonuses. It was a Thursday, early October. The kind of day where the air's just crisp enough to remind you summer's dead. I had my travel mug in one hand, half full of coffee that had long since gone bitter. The usual shuffle to my cubicle, the stale scent of paper and dust and microwaved breakfast sandwiches. I was reviewing quarterly numbers when the email came in. Subject line: meeting, 10:30 a.m. No details, just a location. 14th floor conference room. That was never a good sign. You didn't get called up to 14 unless you were going places or getting shown the door. I remember the elevator ride. 3 of us in silence. Me in the middle, flanked by 2 interns who probably thought I was heading up for a promotion. They'd learn soon enough. You can smell it on someone when they've been in too long, worn out at the seams but still pushing because you've built your life around the idea that hard work means something. The conference room was cold, probably intentional. Makes it harder to sweat, easier to sit still while they gut you with smiles. My boss, Donnie McPherson, was already there. He didn't stand when I came in. "Have a seat, Mike," he said, like we were starting a performance review instead of a firing squad. HR was there too. Amanda. She couldn't look me in the eye. "We've decided to go in a different direction," Donnie said, like we were talking about fonts on a PowerPoint slide. Different direction. That phrase still makes my jaw clench. It's corporate speak for we found someone younger, cheaper, and more pliable. I don't even remember half of what they said after that. Amanda handed me a packet. COBRA info, final paycheck breakdown. Some nonsense about career transition services. My ears rang. My mouth tasted like copper. I'd given this place everything short of my soul, and Donnie tossed me out like expired inventory. I walked out with a cardboard box and a severance package that couldn't even cover 2 months of mortgage. But I didn't cry. Not then. I drove home in silence, windows down even though it was too cold. My wife wasn't home yet. I set the box down on the kitchen counter and just stood there, staring at the cheap pens and old Post-its like they meant something, and that's when I saw it. The car. In a picture, taped to the side of my monitor, a candy apple red 1967 Shelby GT500. Donnie's dream car. He talked about it all the time. "One day," he'd say, "that baby's gonna be mine." He even had a screensaver of it. I used to nod politely. But that day? That day, something inside me turned cold and clear. One day, I thought, that baby's gonna be mine instead. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed next to my wife, watching the slow arc of headlights creep across the ceiling from passing cars. She knew something was wrong. She always does. But I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud. It made it too real. That was my job. My identity. You don't just walk away from 12 years and shrug it off. But somewhere around 3 a.m., after I finally muttered the truth, and she sat up in shock, I felt the shift. Not panic, not fear, though those would come, but resolve. Quiet, grim resolve. The kind of thing that simmers in the chest like coals, waiting. The next morning, I shaved, put on a button-down, and walked into the unemployment office like it was another day at the job. I filed the paperwork, shook hands with a counselor named Carl who smelled like menthols and instant coffee, and went home to an inbox already filled with thanks but no thanks replies from places that wanted recent experience and a dynamic, youthful presence. Corporate speak for we don't want anyone over 40 who might remember a time before Slack. My pride took hit after hit, but that cold, clear feeling from the day before hadn't left. If anything, it had sharpened. Especially when I pulled up Facebook on a bored scroll and there he was, Donnie, smiling in front of a dealership, holding up keys like he'd won the damn lottery. "Test drove the beast today," the caption said. And there it was, that same candy apple red Shelby GT500 shining like a sin under the showroom lights. My stomach turned. He hadn't bought it, yet. But the way he looked at it, he was circling, drooling. You don't post a picture like that unless you're already measuring the garage. And I knew Donnie. He was probably trying to move a few stocks, dump some crypto, maybe delay a pool installation just long enough to make it happen. That car wasn't just a purchase. It was a monument to his ego, a symbol, a look what I've earned trophy. And that's when it clicked. Revenge wasn't going to be loud. It wasn't going to be some social media tirade or a desperate email to HR. It was going to be simple, clean, elegant even. I was going to buy that car first. Now, I didn't have Donnie's money. Middle management doesn't exactly come with golden parachutes, and my severance sure as hell wasn't about to cover a collector-grade Shelby. But I had savings. A small 401k I could tap with penalty, some equity in the house I'd been building up for years. It would hurt. It would mean sacrifice. But it would also mean watching Donnie walk into that dealership with a check in hand only to hear, "Sorry, someone else bought it yesterday." I started making calls, talking to people, digging through car collector forums and dealership listings. I became obsessed, not with the car itself, but what it represented. It wasn't just about getting even. It was about taking something back, control, dignity, maybe even a little bit of joy in a year that had started so bitterly. And for the first time in a long while, I felt awake, like I had a mission again. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not even my wife, not at first. Not because I was hiding it, but because I needed it to be mine. Just mine. Everything else had been a team decision, a compromise, a negotiation. Marriage, parenting, jobs, all those years of doing what I was supposed to do, being the reliable one, the man who didn't stir the pot. But this was personal. It wasn't about practicality or return on investment. It was about fire in the belly, about the kind of satisfaction that doesn't show up in a spreadsheet. I tracked the dealership from Donnie's post, zoomed in on the logo, cross-referenced it with Shelby-licensed sellers in the state. Found it. Bradford Classic Motors, 2 hours north. I called them the next morning, heart pounding harder than I expected. "Yeah, we've still got the 67, the salesman said, voice casual, like he didn't realize he was holding the ignition key to my plan. "Full restoration, original paint code. You won't find another like it in a 100-mile radius." I told him I was interested, and suddenly I was back in the rhythm, negotiating, reading tone, using silence to push leverage. I might have been unemployed, but 12 years of pitch decks and supplier contracts don't disappear overnight. He offered a price that made my throat tighten. I countered. We danced. In the end, he agreed to hold the car for 48 hours if I wired a $2,000 deposit. That part stung. I was gambling more than just money, but I did it. The drive up felt like I was floating. Not with excitement, more like I was leaving something behind. As the city shrank in the rear view, I thought about Donnie, about the way he'd looked at me that last day. Like he was doing me a favor, like he was sparing me from further irrelevance. I could practically hear him chuckling with the other execs. "Old Mike finally got the axe, huh?" "Shame, guy worked like a mule." I'd bet good money he hadn't thought about me since. Until now, Bradford Classic Motors sat on the edge of a small industrial town. One of those places where American flags are sun-faded and the gas stations sell more scratch tickets than gas. The dealership was tucked between a shuttered textile mill and a bait shop. But when I stepped inside, it was another world. Clean floors, chrome gleaming, a sea cool and dry. And there she was. The Shelby. She looked even better in person. Candy apple red, so rich it looked wet, curves that caught the light like sculpture. Black rally stripes down the hood. Leather seats, hand-stitched. This wasn't just a car. It was a statement. And suddenly, I understood Donnie's obsession. It was power on wheels, something a man like him thought he could own to prove he'd made it. But I was here first. I signed the paperwork that afternoon, wired the rest of the money. And as I slipped into the driver's seat for the first time, gripping the worn wooden steering wheel, I swear I felt years of frustration melt into something sharper. Cooler. Not joy exactly, but clarity, and just the faintest flicker of a smile. The drive home felt like I was inside a movie I'd never believed I'd be cast in. That deep rumble of the Shelby's V8 was nothing like the polite hum of my Honda Accord. It was visceral, alive. Every gear shift was a punctuation mark in a sentence I'd waited years to write. I didn't take the freeway. I took the long way, through old back roads and stretches of forested two-lane, the kind of places where time slows down and there's nobody around to watch you grin like a lunatic. The fall leaves were starting to turn, and with the windows down, I felt something I hadn't in months. Free. When I pulled into the driveway, my wife came outside before I even turned the engine off. Her face was half confusion, half concern, like she was trying to decide whether I'd won the lottery or lost my damn mind. I killed the ignition and stepped out slowly, like I was unveiling something sacred. "Mike, what the hell is this?" she asked, eyes locked on the Shelby. "It's mine," I said simply. She stared at me, mouth parting like she wanted to yell or laugh or both. "Yours? What, how, did you buy this?" I nodded. I did. And then I told her everything, from the firing to the Facebook post to the dealership 2 hours north. I laid it all out, not as an excuse, but as a confession. She didn't interrupt, just stood there with arms crossed, trying to process the man in front of her. Not the dependable husband she knew, but someone angrier, sharper, someone burned enough to make a reckless, ridiculous choice. When I was done, she looked at the car, then back at me. "We have 2 kids in school, a mortgage, and you're buying revenge muscle cars?" "I know," I said, "but this was for me, just once. It had to be." Her silence stretched long, but then, surprisingly, she nodded. "Okay. You get one midlife crisis, just one. After this, we figure things out." I wanted to hug her, but she turned and walked back inside. Fair enough. The next few days were strange. A blur of job applications, awkward phone interviews, and moments where I'd find myself in the garage, just staring at the Shelby like it held some secret I hadn't unlocked yet. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. It was a Saturday afternoon when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Mike? It's Donnie." His voice was all wrong. Too casual, too forced. My pulse ticked up. "Hey, Donnie," I said, cool as ice. I heard you bought something recently, a certain Shelby." I smiled, leaned back against the workbench. "Yeah, sure did." Silence. Then a forced chuckle. Well, small world. I was actually about to grab that one myself. Been saving up. You remember how I always talked about it, right? Yeah, I said. I remember. Another pause. Then his voice dropped just slightly. Look, if you're willing to sell, maybe we can work something out. I'd be willing to pay a little over what you paid. Think of it as doing an old colleague a solid. I looked at the car. The car that wasn't just metal and horsepower, but a message in red and black. No thanks, I said. I think I'll hang on to it a while. Donnie didn't respond right away. Just this pause, longer than it needed to be. I imagined him in his designer kitchen, pacing with a tumbler of bourbon in hand, staring out over some manicured lawn he never mowed himself. The kind of silence that says I'm not used to hearing no. Come on, Mike, he finally said, the edge in his voice creeping through. Be reasonable. You're not exactly in a position to collect cars, are you? I let the insult sit there, naked and ugly. It didn't even sting. You're right, I said. I'm not collecting anything, just keeping this one. You're making a mistake, he muttered, tone darkening. You think this is some kind of payback? No, I said, smiling into the phone. I know it is. I hung up before he could say another word. That night, I took the Shelby out again. Just me, the road, and that engine growling like thunder bottled up in a steel cage. I didn't go anywhere in particular. I just drove. Sometimes we need motion to sort things in our heads. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. That had passed. What I felt now was something steadier, a strange sort of peace. I'd done it. Not just bought a car, but took something back that no meeting, no pink slip, no smug executive could take from me again. The irony was that Donnie had done me a favor. Firing me forced me to confront the truth. I'd been stuck. Coasting on loyalty, convincing myself that grinding day after day under fluorescent lights was the honorable thing to do. I'd sacrificed so much. Not just time, but pieces of myself. The way I used to think. The way I used to dream. Somewhere along the way, I traded those things for job titles and team player badges. In the weeks that followed, I started talking to people. Not recruiters, not HR reps. People. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years. A guy I knew from high school who ran a small consulting firm. Another old co-worker who left the rat race years ago to build custom motorcycles out west. I started saying yes to coffee meetings, lunches, ideas I would have laughed off a year ago because they didn't come with dental insurance and a 401k match. And then something strange happened. I started to believe in myself again. Not the office version of me, the real one. The one who used to sketch business plans in the margins of notebooks. The one who used to stay up late reading articles about design thinking and startup culture like they were treasure maps. That guy wasn't dead. He'd just been buried under years of performance reviews and polite compliance. The Shelby sat in the garage like a totem now. A reminder that sometimes you have to break something. Routine, expectations, your own damn fear, to build something better. Spring came early that year. One of those weird Midwest flukes where the snow melts in a weekend and suddenly you're mowing the lawn in shorts, wondering if you imagined winter altogether. The Shelby gleamed in the driveway that Sunday afternoon, polished like I was taking it to a show. I wasn't. I was just driving it down to the lake. Nothing fancy, just me, a thermos of coffee and some quiet. It had become a ritual. Time to think. Time to breathe. By then I'd launched my own thing. Small, scrappy consulting outfit. Just me and a laptop at the start. But word got around. A few former clients reached out. Some startup guys who wanted someone with real-world scars. The pay wasn't like before, not yet. But it was mine. Every win, every check, every risk. Mine. I saw Donnie once more, by accident, grocery store parking lot. He didn't see me at first, just me standing next to the Shelby, back hatch open, loading a bag of groceries into the trunk. I watched him stop mid-stride, recognize the car, then me. He did a double take like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. He walked over, putting on that same smooth smile he always used before asking someone to stay late for no overtime. "Still hanging on to it, huh?" he asked, eyes scanning the car like it might still slip through his fingers. "She's a beauty." "Yeah," I said, shutting the trunk. "Runs better than I expected." He nodded, a little too quickly. "Glad you're doing all right." There it was. That awkward hesitance, the flicker of disbelief. I wasn't supposed to be all right. In his world, guys like me got quietly replaced, faded into LinkedIn footnotes and barstool regrets. We didn't bounce back. We didn't win. I just smiled. "You ever end up finding another one?" His face tightened. "Nah, not yet. Prices went up. Timing's been bad." I nodded. "Yeah, timing's everything." We stood there in silence. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, not because he didn't get the car, but because he needed it so badly to prove something, that he mattered, that he'd arrived. But me? I didn't need proof anymore. I was the proof. "Well," I said, stepping towards the driver's side. "Good seeing you, Donnie." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, an apology, a dig, a deal, but nothing came out. I slid behind the wheel, engine snarling to life beneath my hand, and pulled out without another word. As the road unspooled ahead of me, I thought about everything I'd lost, and everything I'd gained. Donnie fired me, sure. But in doing so, he gave me something better than a promotion or a pension. He gave me back myself. And that was worth more than any dream car, even this one.